I'm sorry, excuse me.
All right, 10:22, we're back in session. Any questions for Mr. McMullen? Any comments y'all like to make to the court?
I would just like to ask one question. You said something about a week,
Settlement week?
yeah.
Yes, ma'am.
Settlement week. Exactly who does that involve and how does that involve? Does it involve the community as far as people voluntarily come in for conflict resolutions? Or how does that work?
It would be a situation that only filed cases referred by the court. So if the court decides, that particular court decides to participate, then they offer that or require them to go down there. And that money, there aren't a ton of mediators particularly that cover every specialty in the area. So that money could be used to pay for mediators to come from wherever. And then we're all in one location and the judge, okay, I've got somebody that handle family. I've got somebody that can handle, say, a patent case. It allows, we could go to the judges and say, who wants to participate this year? Okay, what cases are you going to need? Types of cases do you need mediators for? Then we go find those type of mediators, and generally that's how that would work.
Madam Clerk, I have to say one thing. I know in Beaumont, the way they do it, it's about a couple of 100,000 people, Jefferson County. It's the same week, correct me if I'm wrong, Judge, but all the judges statewide go to a conference, correct? So that's designated settlement week, and what they do is they make the lawyers that do civil work, plaintiff and defense show up, bring several cases, and then also act as mediator in other cases. So the judges are gone, and they all go to the courthouse and break out in different rooms. So one day you're trying to get rid of one of your cases, the next day you're acting as a mediator for people that you practice law with,
Mr. McMullen, during your presentation, I kept hearing the word volunteer and the word staff. Volunteers are few and far between. Staff costs money. So for some reason, my JPs are opposed to this. If we do sign on to this, is it their option that they do not have to use this
Correct.
service? That
Yes, sir.
they can opt out not to use it?
Yes, sir. And the staffing, that goes to the point of necessity to maybe save longer if going to operate as an individual, independent county system.
Right.
Versus the pooling of all those resources with all of the Adcock counties.
Where are you guys at district? Judge Moore and Sherry, where are y'all at on this?
My concerns, I wanted to make sure it wasn't going to cost the taxpayers any additional money. It's all funded through the fees that are paid, so that's taken care of. My second concern was for our clerks, because the legislature, they put so many requirements on them. There's no additional work that they're required to do. There's already an account that's set up. They have to pay the $35 per fee for each case. Goes into that account. It's remitted to the state quarterly. So that's already set up. There's nothing additional that they're going to have to do. The fact that they don't have to report what we do with the money, how we spend it, did we pay mediators, or what we did with it, so there's nothing else that they have to do. I want to make sure that they're not required to do anything else because they already have enough to do. My next concern is if at any point the state says, well, look, we're losing all this money because they're all setting up these systems. If they change it and we're start requiring us to do additional reporting what we're spending with, then I wanted to know that we could opt out of this and just say, well, we tried it, didn't work, we're not going to put any additional work on those. I think from a practical standpoint, I think it's going to take at least 2 years. That gives us at least that period of time to figure out if this system would work for us and if there's one that will work. And then also, since the judges have the option to not send anybody, if they don't want to use it, then they don't have to. When I've talked to him, I make him use this 3 or 4 times a year because of the situations that come up. It's going to be for lower income people. A lot of times they can't afford mediators. This might be able to do that. The staffing issue, I had an issue with that because $25,000, regardless of how long you're going to do this, is never going to be able to staff an office over a long period of time. So I'm thinking the ECOG situation, we're going to need them to do the intake for us so that we'll be part of the group. But we won't be able to determine that until they've had enough time to gather enough money over at least a couple of years to do that.
Okay.
So I've talked to my clerk,
Mr. McMullen, if we pass this resolution today and we sit for 2 years, as Judge Moore had said, preparing, we're saving the money, the end of 2 years, we say, you know what, we don't really want to be a part of it. Could we at that point dissolve this system, send our 50,000 on back to Austin and no harm, no foul?
Yes, and it's as easy as saying we hereby, end the system.
Okay.
You do it, if you, approve it today, you could, say, you know what, we're done next week.
Okay.
That's the broadness of
Very
your
flexible.
discretion.
Okay.
I do have a question too. Okay, while we're holding this money in the county, is the county gonna be able to get interest on this county throughout the time, or no?
Yeah, there's no restriction for what is done with the money that is already in your county. And all of the rules with investing it, that is definitely out of my wheelhouse, but the fund is operated at the discretion of the commissioner's court. And if they say, we're doing it how we do it with all of our other funds, and that's how it's, will be done.
You know, that's one of the questions that, when I look over your presentation is, you know, in one of the slides, it showed that, you know, there's 193 counties that remitted a little over $6 million. Well, you know, there's just 254 counties in the whole state of Texas.
sir.
So when you count out your 5 or 6 largest counties, if Houston saved almost a little over 3.5 million, at what point is the state gonna say, you know, hey, wait a minute, there's $20 million that these 5 or 6 larger counties that have gone to this system that are not remitting this money in, because 193 of us had sent for $6 million. Something's fixing to snap down in Austin, and they're either gonna revisit this system that's put in place since, you said 22. But you said that, if I heard right, that Houston had been doing this prior to 22. What gave them the ability to just out of the blue set this system up and save 3.5 million that if this wasn't established until 22? I mean, what allowed them to do it prior to Senate Bill 41?
Well, and to that, really, well, I have an outstanding, public information request to the comptroller as to how much has been kept by the counties. That's pending, but all of these big counties, Dallas, there were people who responded, we don't have records, which, I don't know why they're required to, but all these big counties, Bear, Harris, Dallas, they had these systems in place, not because they saw the legislation coming, they already had them in place through generally, fundraising, things like that. And so the state's been, you know, I believe that Harris, in the 80s is when they established their first system.
That they just weren't able to keep the fees. In 22, the state allowed counties to keep fees, so you could have a alternative dispute resolution system. Prior to that, you just didn't get to keep.
There was just no funding.
You
Right.
still sent your money to Austin,
That's
just
right.
like we do now, as far as through your different offices.
Well, there was actually nothing no filing fees tied to a dispute resolution system until this statute. Yes, sir. But, you know, the folks in Austin knew that these big counties that would benefit the most from the savings already had these set up. So this isn't like a fast run by all the big guys saying we need to keep our, they're aware. I mean, the comptroller office is aware that there is interest as to, who's giving what to the state, and that's what I continue to look at. And, you know, along this path that we go down, I'm going to continue to share the information and data that I get from the comptroller.
And I guess I would have to agree after listening to it that, you know, in the event that, with the presentation today, that we could go into it like more or less as a trial, and at some point when our JPs and our offices and our courts tell us that, hey, you know, it appeared to be a good system for us, but it's not for Harrison County, then all we have to do is send a letter to you know, to say we.
You don't even have to send a letter.
Oh, okay. You
They
just,
just start saying.
they just do the old, go back to the old system.
Yeah, line 10 now has those numbers back in it, that's it. Yeah, it's, I'm not selling you a contract with loophole.
Okay, well, no, I understand, but I just wanna make, this is something,
Yes, sir.
my response today was gonna be that I'd like to see us table it, because I'd like to, hear what Judge Moore and Judge Black and the JPs tell us that's gonna actually use, it's not gonna affect us, per se. I mean, it'd be nice to retain $25,000 from what we're sending to Austin, but I also know it's like everything else that in my lifetime that I've seen, it, once something appears to be good for the working class guy, that it's not long. If you live long enough, you'll see it reversed. And that's the only thing that for me, is it, number one, if it's not good for us, I don't wanna see us get tied into something that we're locked in and can't get out of, but you answered that question. And at the same time, I don't deal with this, so I'm not the person without asking our JPs and our judges and all, what their opinion is. Is this something that you feel like y'all wanna try? Do we need to just scrap it from the get-go? I mean, that's what I base my decision, or when I go to vote on something, I want somebody that it actually affects on a day-to-day basis to tell me, hey, this is good, we should try it, or this is bad, we shouldn't. And that's the way, because I mean, I don't have a clue as to whether to make the decision that it's a good, good for the county. So this is what you're gonna do. I would rather them answer those questions for me as to how it actually affects them in their offices on a day-to-day issue, But I mean, that's just,
Let's assume that at the end of the year, every court says, you know what, none of these proposed systems will work for us. We don't want to send cases there, et cetera. That doesn't mean you have to stop. You could use that money simply to train people to be mediators and arbitrators.
in your own county.
Yeah, so it's just, you sign up, and if you qualify for and the training costs anywhere from $1,000 to $2,000. And so, it can be seen as a source of funding to better somebody in their career, and their, the change of a career path, et cetera. But, provide people who might not otherwise look to be mediators because the expense has the opportunity to be one.
But how are we training when you say mediators, when I'm like Commissioner Hatfield, volunteers that are hearing these cases? I mean, I'm assuming that it's not old Joe off the street's gonna come in and hear. They've actually have to be trained and certified or have some type of documentation that says they're qualified to hear this or do this.
Correct,
Okay.
exactly.
Okay.
So if we didn't have a alternative dispute resolution program, but we simply trained people to be mediators, they could do that outside of that program. You're simply equipping them to.
It's that broad,
Yeah.
the statute. I'm eliminating, our focus today is on how it can come to courts, specifically in cases, but it's that broad where it is a system to train individuals in your county to become mediators, to become impartial third parties.
Very good, and I'm like Commissioner Ebar, if our folks don't want to, if they didn't support it at all, or if it negatively affects them, I wouldn't be for this either. Our JPs are not interested in it, but they don't have to participate in it, so it's no harm, no foul to them at all. If they ever do decide to use it, it'll be there.
Right. Yeah, who knows, by the end of the year, they might say this is the best option I've ever heard of.
Right. But the main point, I suppose, today is for us to choose whether to stop sending our money, our local dollars, to
Yes.
Austin.
It's not to decide how exactly the system will work best for the county. We're going to start today to invest the money to figure out the best way to help our community.
So basically, if we elect to agree to this, then you're saying, I guess January 1, when a new quarter starts, when you're not on your reports to Austin, you just quit sending that line item in that example for Harris County that where they zeroed out in line 10, instead of what ours would normally be, then we'd zero our line out and that money would stay in the coffers here at the county.
Yes, sir.
And all because we're under this
Senate
ADR
Bill 401.
system.
Yes.
Ms. Rushing, I suppose you'd have no issue creating us another account or line item to put these savings in instead of you sending those dollars to Austin and we kept them here, that's not an issue for you.
No, it's not, but if we do earn interest on that and we do decide to send it back, we will have to send interest back as well.
With
That's-
you, if we elect
If
to
we
do
do
this
that,
and you deposit this money for a year and a half, you're saying if it's in our general, in our deposited, invested funds, if it, whatever it occurs in interest at the time we step out of it, then we send, we don't send them back pay that while we were under this system, I would assume. I mean, we would go forward from the date you dropped out of the system and said, hey, it's not working, we're gonna go back to putting that on line 10 and sending it to the comptroller. So it wouldn't retroact back, it would require you to send the funds that you had held, say for a year and a half, and it had earned the interest during that year and a half. I mean, is that right? That's what I'm hearing. Would we have to retroactive pay them back from today's date that we stopped sending line 10 to the state?
The interest portion, admittedly, I'm not sure, the law as it relates to that. And so what I would suggest is, start saving now and before moving that money, say the first, well, I guess some will be there now, but before moving into an interest situation, I'm happy to work with you, figure out, that interest part of it. You could just keep it in that fund, not involve it in any interest-bearing type of account, and then, throughout that year, there's no interest earned and there's no interest to report.
Well, I would think if the state gets involved and you decide that you're dropping out, and if there is a back pay, it's gonna be like anything else, there's gonna be a penalty per month that you didn't send money to, so it would eat your interest up anyway. If that's what the state would say they were gonna
Am
do.
I understanding there is no back pay?
Correct.
Thank you.
There's what?
There is no back pay.
Okay, so we don't need to worry about it.
Don't even worry about that. Either you opt in today, next week, you can opt out.
Hopefully, before the end of the year, we have 14 counties that are at least interested in establishing their system, but that doesn't mean we're going to have a system of 14 at the end of it. I'm dedicating myself to y'all, pro bono, committed to this.
Well,
I won't be just running away with something, hey, we noticed the first time on your report there was zero, why is that? I'm happy to hop on the phone. As the attorney, handling the ADR, system development for Harrison County. Whatever title, is necessary, or just JD.
I got one more and then I'll shut up.
No, I really appreciate this. I think it's important. This is a part of the process itself.
As you work through it, there were some questions that come to mind, and I ain't jotting them down, I'm just trying to. One thing that was said, and until I can find it exactly, it talked about setting up your policies of how it was gonna work. To me, the policies need to be in place today before you opt in. I mean, to me, it's hard for me to say, yeah, this is what we're gonna do, and then we decide how it's gonna function and work. Should that not be the first thing that we do? I mean,
Well, that's a fair approach for the big counties that already have their systems in place and the funding available. There is no requirement that once established, it has to be able to take cases immediately. There's no requirement.
okay.
It allows, the discretion is that broad that a period of due diligence, I feel like it doesn't even need to be stated. I think it would be irresponsible for counties to say, okay, we're gonna start saving a day, and this is what we're gonna do.
Okay.
But the first step before, you gotta have a budget before you can really know exactly what you can do with it.
Okay.
Now, our quarter, this is October. So how would that be effective as far as money taken in already, whenever, if you choose to make it in place
Do you remit the money at the end of the quarter?
at the end of the quarter.
Right, and so with this order in place, that money that's going into that fund currently, with every case that's filed, it collects, and then when, the end of the year comes around, it's time to report, it's just zeros. There's no
We're
portion that,
already into October.
Yeah, you just
So,
hold the
so for
money.
this fourth quarter, whenever you send that in January, you would show zero for this line, for the whole quarter.
Yeah.
Of course, I guess you hadn't done it for, the third quarter, that's coming up, right?
That's true.
Yeah, but I would find it hard to believe that we can approve this today and then retroactive back to the third
No,
quarter.
I think.
I hope we can, but I'm just
Sorry,
saying.
I'm sorry I think like that, but
You're confusing me worse.
I agree with you, Eva.
we'll just start on the fourth quarter, these last 3 months. So in January, you'll show zero and you'll create a separate account and those funds will just go there.
So you should already have an account set up.
Those already an account for that, okay,
Yes, they're done.
perfect.
And answer your question on the policy issue, we've got to decide which of the 3 or 4 options we would do, so that's when the
That's-
policy.
oh, okay,
will apply.
okay.
That's why we need the time to figure out which one's gonna work for us.
Thank you, Judge.
Yep, thank you
Thank
for
you,
coming over.
Judge.
Appreciate it.
Can I explain one little thing too? And I'm not trying to step
I
on
love
your feet or your toes, but the ADR fund has been established for a while. We have been putting $15 into an account for several years now. In '22, the state came together with this Senate bill so that they could combine the consolidate fees and things like that for all the counties to get more of a case-like fee court cost that was related to all the counties, and they all had about the same price, the same fees and things like that. The ADR has been established, we've been collecting that. That's how these other counties that are larger have had these offices in the past, is because they have been collecting that fee. Our fees have always gone to the state, all the way through. So in '22, they raised the fee from $15 to $35, which became a combined court cost that wanted to affect all the counties, so all the counties are charging the same type fees wherever you go to go file a case within the state of Texas. So that's where that's all come about. That's how they've had to have and been able to have ADRs in the past, is they were already collecting those funds. They already had those offices established, so they had their things set up. So that's what a lot of it is. It is new to us. We've never had an ADR. At first, I was very skeptical. I wanted to make sure Harrison County was not going to be hurt in this, that we weren't going to lose our fee filings, our number of fees that are being filed, our number of cases being filed to affect our judges. Our judges get a report card every month sent to the state. And it tells them how many cases we dispose of, how many cases we file, you know, all this good stuff. Then we have our quarterly fees to show how much we're taking in and all this stuff. So I just was very concerned because I have a dear heart to Harrison County, and he does too, I see. But it just wanted to make sure Harrison County wasn't gonna be affected in any way by our numbers that would affect our judges, our courts in any way. And that was my whole issue with questioning Mr. McMullen
I
and
appreciate
all of his, you know, endeavors here. But as I see it today and I see what he's got, as long as we can pull out, I would think that the court would be, you know, it would be a good gesture to go ahead, approve that the court fees and the quarterly fees go into this fund, and then maybe we can, you know, go from there and try to see about getting the guidelines and rules and the statutes all pulled together. And if he's willing to do it pro bono, that's a plus to us. And that way we can at least start collecting the funds.
So if we elect to do this, all fees that come in through JPs, the court systems, or wherever they come from, will automatically go over into this. And we will retain, I guess my question I'm getting to is, like Judge Moore said, I might use it 3 or 4 times a year. So we talk about the fees that he would collect for those 3 or 4 times a year, or does all the fees for everything he hears go into this fund on the reports and zero out and we retain? Or do you still have to break them down between what's heard through this procedure and what's not? Because if the JPs aren't gonna use it or not, doesn't, and they don't recommend or sentence or whatever they do to get them over to a mediation to settle something, do you just keep those fees of the people that actually go through it? Or do you keep all your fees for the whole county?
Well, every case that gets filed, Justice, County, every case, takes a cut of it. And a fund already exists. That Senate bill required that county dispute resolution fund. And, you know, there was no reporting on, when I talked to Judge Moore, you know, I was talking about, you know, simple, Mr. Mangus had brought up that, you know, some mediators won't come down here and handle these district cases, you know, they want at least $500, which for this type of system, I think it's important to have some compensation, some incentive, but that's too much. But you could take that $25,000 and say, okay, you're gonna have 5 cases a year, you think? Well, we're gonna go ahead and budget $2,500 for his court. I mean, the discretion is unlimited. If there is the courts, if it's the policy of alternative dispute resolution and you have a fund and you have this resource that let's say you only mediate 2 cases a year, it's still there. It's for the community.
Okay.
It's using the money that citizens are filing into the courts here. And instead of letting that money go to Austin, it keeps it here and it goes to the exact purpose to help try to resolve these disputes.
Mr. Ibar, I really think the understanding is, for every case we file, we get $350. That's a civil case. Okay, then there, of course, there's additional fees for service and things like that, and issuances. But $35 of that $350 is retained in that ADR, okay? So that ADR fund, all the money that the JPs does for civil cases, that, you know, county clerk does for civil cases, we do for civil cases, all that money goes into that fund. We send a check up to the treasurer for state fees. They then have a dedicated fund that money goes into. It sits there until the end of the quarter, then the fees are paid to the state, okay? As long as we're collecting it, we're still gonna collect it for every case, whether we use it 3 times or 100 times, that money's still gonna be sitting there. It'll be in our county. And I think that's what,
Yes,
is
ma'am.
that correct?
Perfectly said. Thank you.
So what you're saying is, if, don't say it's 350, I mean, you send it up, you'd send that to Austin if we didn't have this in place to retain 10% of it.
That $35 for every case that we file would go to, it has been going straight to Austin.
Okay, so it
Every
would stay,
It will just stay in your
that
county
fund, okay.
for our fund, and it could be used, like he said, to train, for mediators, things like that. I see it as a plus in a way, as long as it's not gonna hurt our courts
Right.
and not gonna hurt our county, for the community, for people who are low income, who can't afford mediators and things like that. I see it as a plus for our county. I think it'll serve our citizens, but I also see that, you know, as long as it doesn't hurt our courts, I'm for it, so.
okay,
And one other point, because we keep bringing up the JPs that say that they may not be interested in it, but they might run across a case,
yeah.
you know, in the future that they just can't handle it, and they can send it to this mediation.
Well, I think it's like anything, you know, I mean, you might, in your mind, you think, I don't wanna use it, I don't see how it'll help me, and once it's in place, and once that ball starts rolling, yeah, like you say, there'll be something that comes in that
Right.
will fit this scenario, and they'll slowly start using it, I think. I mean, it's like anything else.
Right, because I
At
have
first-
known some JPs say, well, I don't know what to do with this, and then they'll refer it to Judge Black.
Yeah.
You know, something like that. And then he might say, well, let's send it to the mediator.
Sure. All right, any other questions, comments? Before us, we have this resolution, an order in support of the establishment of a civil court alternative dispute resolution system that we've just heard from Mr. McMullen about. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion to approve.
Second. We have a motion by Commissioner Timmons, a second by Commissioner Ebarb. Any other questions or comments? All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, motion passes 4-0. Thank you, sir.
Appreciate it.
Today we have no, executive session. Yes, sir.
As some compensation, for my pro bono services, my mom had asked for me to get a picture, could Josh take a picture of me?
Sure. We can come down there. This is the living room.
It's 10%.
Last item, is there a motion to adjourn?
So moved. Second.
Motion by Commissioner Hatfield, second by Commissioner Ebarb. All in favor? Aye. Any opposed? Hearing none, it's 10:53. We're adjourned.